Another one. This one is called hashtag Transcendent Health, adapting an LGB plus inclusive teen pregnancy prevention program for transgender boys. I can't even say this without laughing. Do you think that that is a useful form of our tax spend? Is a birthing person a woman? Is that another word for female?
That is outside the scope of my expertise.
Seems like erasure language to me. I've been told that that type of vernacular constitutes erasure language. How about
Again, I think all kinds of government investment should be dedicated toward mathematical.
all kinds of government investment? You don't have any kind of limit on what we're spending our money on? Just everything? Is that your testimony?
I am talking about Doge. You brought up.
So am I. This is a grant that Doge cut.
Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to Signal 76, your beacon of truth in these dark times of government overreach and woke insanity. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into a congressional hearing that perfectly exposes everything that's wrong with our bloated federal government and the radical left's war on common sense. What you're about to see will make your blood boil, but stick with me until the very end, because I'm going to break down exactly how the deep state bureaucrats are stealing your hard-earned tax dollars to fund their woke agenda. Before we get started, Patriots, if you believe in defending our constitutional values and exposing government waste, smash that subscribe button right now. We're building an army of awakened Americans who refuse to let the establishment destroy our great nation. Hit that notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment letting me know you're ready to take our country back. Trust me, you want to share this with every Patriot you know, because what we're uncovering today is absolutely explosive.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It never gets boring in here. And I'd like to say thank you to the witnesses for being here and for taking the time. Miss Devito, thank you for coming here. In your testimony, you said that Americans deserve a government that works for them, a government that makes their lives easier and more secure. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Great. I'd like to read through a couple of the grants that Doge has pulled back, and I'd like to get your take on them. They pulled back a $1.5 million NIH grant to Morehouse College. It was called the Center to Advance Reproductive Justice and Behavioral Health among Black, pregnant / postpartum women and birthing people. Do you think that that makes Americans' lives easier and more secure?
I think that medical and scientific research of all types.
Do you think that that constitutes critical research? According to your testimony, NIH grants are critical research?
I think that government research of all types in the medical.
Including of birthing people?
I think bench research of all types plays a fundamental role.
What is a birthing person?
Sir, I am here to talk about the Doge impact.
Well, I'm asking you about this grant and you're defending it. So I'm asking you who is birthing people?
I am not familiar with this grant.
Mm-hmm.
I take a position that all kinds of government research, medical, pharmaceutical,
is a birthing person a woman? Is that another word for female?
That is outside the scope of my expertise.
Seems like erasure language to me. I've been told that that type of vernacular constitutes erasure language. How about another one? How about the conference, Gender Equity in the Mathematical Study of Commutative Algebra? Do you think that that's a valid form of government spending?
I think mathematical research of all types is deserving of government.
What about studying, and this is directly from the National Science Foundation's website, women and non-binary mathematicians?
Again, I think all kinds of government investment should be dedicated toward mathematical.
All kinds of government investment. You don't have any kind of limit on what we're spending our money on? Just everything? Is that your testimony?
I am talking about Doge. You brought up a grant.
So am I. This is a grant that Doge cut.
I am not familiar with this particular grant, but I think government investment in mathematical, biological.
Okay. Let's do another one. This one is called hashtag Transcendent Health, adapting an LGB plus inclusive teen pregnancy prevention program for transgender boys. I can't even say this without laughing. Do you think that that is a useful form of our tax spend?
I am not familiar with that grant, but I think bench research, government investment in scientific and
Teen
pharmaceutical
pregnancy
research.
for transgender boys. Do you think that that is a useful spend of our tax dollars?
I think government investment in all kinds of scientific research is of the utmost importance.
Including pregnancy prevention for transgender boys. Okay. Let me ask you, we can come back to this later maybe. Do you support abolishing the filibuster still?
I am here to talk about DOGE respectfully.
Right.
and
We could abolish the filibuster and get a lot of DOGE cuts through. And you've written at length on your Twitter about abolishing the filibuster. I'm just curious if you think that we should do that still.
I did a lot of previous work on different topics because I am an economic policy expert, and respectfully, I'm here to talk about DOGE cuts.
Okay, but we could abolish the filibuster and get DOGE cuts. This is totally germane here. Do you think we should?
I am here to talk about DOGE cuts, not strategies for achieving more of them, but the harms that they have produced for working families.
It's a convenient change of opinion. I noticed that most of your comments about the filibuster were during the Biden administration. But we can move on. Let's go back to some more of these grants. Do you think that we should be spending money on, quote, the racialized basis of trait judgments from faces?
I am not at all familiar with that grant.
It's a $500,000 NSF grant.
Okay, I am not familiar with the subject matter or the
Right,
particular
but you're
grant.
defending these.
I am saying that I think the government
You're pretty
has-
adamant against DOGE cuts, and I'm asking you if you support the cuts
I think that
that
there
DOGE
is
has found.
economic and medical, public health, communal benefit to
What
the
about
government investing
cross-sex steroid therapy and cardiovascular risk in the transgender female?
Again, I think government investment in scientific research is
Great.
important.
Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it.
The gentleman's time.
What we witnessed in this congressional hearing is nothing short of a masterclass in how to expose the radical left's grip on our government institutions. Here we have a brave Republican congressman doing exactly what we elected him to do, holding these bureaucrats accountable for their reckless spending of our taxpayer money. And what does he uncover? A treasure trove of woke nonsense that would make any red-blooded American's head spin. Let's start with the star of this show, Miss Devito, who apparently thinks she can waltz into Congress and defend every single penny of government waste without batting an eye. This woman embodies everything wrong with the Washington establishment. She's sitting there, stone-faced, defending grants that sound like they came straight out of a gender studies textbook at some liberal university. The audacity is breathtaking. Patriots. The congressman starts by asking about a $1.5 million grant to something called the Center to Advance Reproductive Justice and Behavioral Health among Black pregnant/postpartum women and birthing people. Did you catch that language, patriots? Birthing people. Not women, not mothers, but birthing people. This is the erasure of womanhood happening right before our eyes, funded by your tax dollars. When the congressman rightfully calls out this absurd terminology and asks what a birthing people is, Miss Devito suddenly claims it's outside her scope of expertise. How convenient. She could defend spending millions on it, but she can't explain what basic terms mean. This is the kind of intellectual dishonesty we've come to expect from these Washington swamp creatures. The congressman nails it when he identifies this as a racer language. That's exactly what it is, patriots. The radical left is systematically erasing the concept of biological womanhood, replacing it with this incomprehensible woke jargon that makes absolutely no sense to normal Americans. They're doing this deliberately to confuse our children and undermine the fundamental building blocks of society. But it gets worse, patriots. Much worse. The congressman then brings up a conference on gender equity in the mathematical study of commutative algebra. Let that sink in for a moment. We're spending taxpayer money to inject woke gender ideology into mathematics. Mathematics, the most objective, fact-based field of study known to humanity, and they're polluting it with social justice warrior nonsense. Miss Devito's response is predictably pathetic. She claims all mathematical research deserves government funding. All of it. No limits, no boundaries, no common sense whatsoever. This is the mentality that has driven our national debt through the roof and turned our government into a bloated monster that devours our prosperity. Then, the congressman mentions women and non-binary mathematicians. And again, Miss Devito doubles down on her position that all kinds of government investment should be dedicated toward mathematics. This woman literally cannot bring herself to admit that maybe, just maybe, we don't need to spend taxpayer money on every harebrained social experiment that comes down the pike. The most outrageous moment comes when the congressman brings up a grant for something called #Transgender Health, adapting an LGBT plus inclusive teen pregnancy prevention program for transgender boys. The congressman can barely get through reading this without laughing. And frankly, who can blame him? This is so absurd, so divorced from reality, that it reads like satire. But here's the kicker, patriots. Miss Devito, with a straight face, defends this lunacy. She actually sits there and claims that pregnancy prevention for transgender boys is a worthwhile use of our tax dollars. Let me be crystal clear about what's happening here. They're talking about biological females who identify as boys, and they're creating specialized programs that cost us millions while our veterans sleep on the streets and our infrastructure crumbles. This is where the rubber meets the road, patriots. This is proof positive that the left has completely lost touch with reality. They've created an alternate universe where biological facts don't matter, where common sense is hate speech, and where your hard-earned tax dollars are nothing more than plain money for their social engineering experiments. The congressman's questioning reveals the true scope of this madness. Grant after grant, program after program, all designed to advance the woke agenda while providing zero benefit to the American people. We're talking about studies on a racialized basis of trait judgment from faces, research on cross-sex steroid therapy, and countless other projects that sound like they were designed by people who have never lived in the real world. What makes this even more infuriating is Miss Devito's complete inability to engage with the substance of these criticisms. When pressed on specific grants, she claims ignorance. When asked about basic terminology, she deflects. When confronted with the absurdity of unlimited government spending, she hides behind platitudes about the importance of research. This is the deep state in action, patriots. These are the unelected bureaucrats who think they know better than you and me about how to spend our money. They've created a system where accountability is non-existent, where waste is celebrated, and where questioning their agenda makes you a bigot. The congressman also tries to pivot to the filibuster issue, and Miss Devito's response is telling. She suddenly becomes very selective about what she's willing to discuss. She can defend every woke grant under the sun, but she won't engage with questions about political strategy. This selective engagement is classic swamp behavior, picking and choosing when to be helpful based on political convenience. Notice how she claims the filibuster discussion is outside her purview, but defending transgender pregnancy prevention programs is somehow within her expertise. The hypocrisy is staggering, patriots. These people will twist themselves into pretzels to avoid taking responsibility for their positions. This hearing perfectly illustrates why we need DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, to cut through this bureaucratic nonsense. President Trump understood that our government has become a bloated, inefficient mess that serves the interests of radical activists rather than the American people. The grants being questioned here are perfect examples of how our tax dollars are being weaponized against our own values. Every single one of these programs represents money that could have been spent on veterans' health care, infrastructure repair, border security, or simply returned to the taxpayers who earned it. Instead, it's being funneled into academic institutions and activist organizations that actively hate traditional American values. The congressman's persistence in this hearing should be a model for every Republican in Congress. This is how you hold the deep state accountable. You ask specific questions, you demand specific answers, and you expose the absurdity of their positions for all Americans to see. No more allowing these bureaucrats to hide behind vague talking points and bureaucratic jargon. What we're witnessing here is nothing less than the systematic destruction of common sense governance. These people have created a parallel universe where spending millions on transgender pregnancy prevention is considered essential government business, while questioning such spending makes you a monster. The financial implications alone should terrify every American. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on programs that serve virtually no one while addressing problems that exist only in the fevered imaginations of academic activists. This money comes from working families who are struggling to pay their bills, put food on the table, and save for their children's futures. But it's not just about the money, patriots. It's about what these programs represent. They're part of a coordinated effort to reshape American society according to radical leftist ideology. Every grant, every program, every study is designed to advance narratives that undermine traditional values, confuse our children, and divide our communities. The language being used in these grants is not accidental. Terms like birthing people, non-binary mathematicians, and transgender boys are all part of a deliberate strategy to normalize ideas that would have been considered absurd just a few years ago. They're using our own tax dollars to fund the propaganda campaign against our values. This is why elections matter, patriots. This is why we can't afford to be complacent or assume someone else will fight these battles for us. Every vote, every voice, every patriot who stands up and says enough is enough makes a difference in this war for the soul of our nation. The congressman in this video represents exactly the kind of leadership we need in Washington. He's not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions, challenge absurd spending, or expose the radical agenda being pushed by unelected bureaucrats. This is what real representation looks like, and we need more of it. We also need to recognize that this battle extends far beyond Congress. These same ideologies are being pushed in our schools, our workplaces, our military, and every other institution in American society. The grants being discussed here are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how our government is being used to advance the woke agenda. The fact that Miss Devito can sit there and defend unlimited government spending on these programs while claiming ignorance about their basic premises shows just how deep the rot goes. These people are either completely incompetent or they're deliberately misleading Congress and the American people. Either way, they have no business controlling our tax dollars. This hearing also highlights the importance of transparency in government. How many other ridiculous grants are being funded without proper oversight? How many more Miss Devitos are out there, defending waste and pushing radical agendas while hiding behind bureaucratic doublespeak? We need to demand complete transparency in government spending. Every grant, every program, every dollar should be subject to public scrutiny. If these bureaucrats can't explain or defend their spending to Congress and the American people, then that spending should be eliminated immediately. The time for half measures and political politeness is over, patriots. We're in a fight for the future of our country, and the other side isn't playing by Marquis of Queensberry rules. They're using every tool at their disposal, including our own tax dollars, to advance their radical agenda. We need to support politicians who are willing to ask the hard questions, cut the wasteful spending, and stand up to the woke mob. We need to vote in every election, from local school boards to federal races, and make our voices heard at every level of government. Most importantly, we need to stay informed and engaged. Videos like this one reveal what's really happening in the halls of power, and it's up to us to share this information with our friends, family, and communities. The mainstream media certainly won't do it, so it's up to patriots like us to get the truth out there. This congressional hearing is a perfect example of why we can never give up fighting for our values. The stakes are too high, the opposition too determined, and the consequences of failure too severe. We owe it to our children and grandchildren to ensure that America remains a beacon of freedom and common sense in a world gone mad. So patriots, I want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think about Miss Devito's defense of these outrageous grants? Are you as fired up as I am about this waste of taxpayer money? And most importantly, what are you doing in your community to fight back against this madness? Remember to subscribe to Signal 76 for more hard-hitting analysis of the issues that matter most to patriotic Americans. Share this video with everyone you know, because the more people who see what's really happening in Washington, the better chance we have of stopping it. Together, we can take our country back and restore the principles that made America great. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and keep fighting the good fight. This is Signal 76, signing off.